This is Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. If you drive long haul, short haul, or heavy haul, they're here to empower and inspire women in the trades on tncradio.live. So gear down, sit back, and enjoy.
You're listening to Women Road Warriors with host Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro, where we work to inspire and empower women in trucking, in the trades, and everywhere. I'm Shelley, and
I'm Kathy.
And we have a very special guest today. Alisha G is a motivational speaker as well as a performance coach for women who are showing up powerful in their business but haven't taken the time to heal from their past and focus on themselves first. Alisha's been featured on Fox 10 News, Next Gen Leadership Experiences, Voyage Phoenix, Total Girl Boss, Thrive Global, and more. Alisha's created the Stand Up and Stand Out framework to drop the excuses and take a stand for yourself in all areas of your life. Alisha has a course called Release, Reclaim, and Rise. Welcome, Alisha. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your voice already. All that sounded great hearing it from you. Thank you.
Yes, welcome, Alisha. This is Kathy here. Why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself so the listeners can know like who you are and what you come from, and then I'll just get into it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So my childhood started off pretty amazing. My dad was in the Air Force, and we traveled around the world with that, and he was also a doctor. So we ended up living in China for a lot of my childhood, seeing the world, doing these amazing things. But really like where it started to shift for me was when we actually moved back to the States. And in that transition, one of my family members started to treat me differently. And at first it was just, playing these games that I was like, okay, this is different than how we used to play. But it just kind of started to continue into something that was more and more sexual. And during that time, I remember trying to ask my friends like, hey, how do you play with this family member? What does that look like? What is your relationship like? And asking all these questions. But no one responded with what I was seeing. And so I got so embarrassed, and I deep down, I knew that it wasn't okay. And so I just started to I would, try to get it to stop, and you just say, this is normal. This is what family members do with each other. Or once I would really try to get him to stop and try to use my voice, he would just say, I'll tell your mom and dad that you drink and you cut yourself. Because at that time, that's what I was doing to mask my pain and mask my confusion and guilt. And so that lasted for on and off for 2 years. And after that, when it finally came out, I was relieved that finally somebody knew about that. And that person was my mom. She ended up hearing from him what had happened. And so she came to me and asked, she asked me my side of the story. And I remember this like it was yesterday. I was sitting in this office chair, spinning around in circles, barely could focus. And she like sharing what little I could, because at that time I didn't even know what sexual abuse meant. I, didn't know how to put it into words. And so when I shared what little I could, she looked at me and she said, Alisha, it takes two. And in that moment, my heart sank, and a lot of people, now I know that aren't believed. 64% of people aren't believed or blamed or something like that. And so what that led to was just years and years, 16 years exactly, of really taking it on as my fault. And, going on with life, being like, okay, I should have told somebody, it was my fault, move on. And so from there on, I just put on a mask that I was okay for so long that I really, really lost myself and didn't even know who I was, until about 5 years ago now, when I really had someone confront me and really shared. I was working with these girls who'd gone through sex trafficking after college, and I felt really blessed that hadn't led me into sex trafficking, because a lot of them have gone through abuse as well as a child. And so I felt really grateful, but I was just exhausted working there and, giving my all to everybody else, but not checking in on myself. And my now fiance called me out at that time, and he said, Alisha, like, if you're going to continue complaining and using that as an excuse for not checking in on yourself, then how are you going to help these girls? So that was like a pivotal moment for me to actually wake up and realize, hey, I don't get to continue allowing this to determine the rest of my life. And from there, it's been this amazing journey of healing and growing and figuring out who I am again and all of that.
Yeah, number one, I'm really sorry that you had to experience that. And I have experienced it myself quite extensively. And I know quite a few women that have had to live through, similar things in various forms. And it's so sad. It's such an awful thing to carry around. And like from my own personal experience with child sexual abuse, and all the long-term effects that it had on me, I can honestly say that it lingered with me deeply in ways that I didn't even recognize until I was 40 and I sought out treatment. It came out in, in eating disorders, in depression, in alcoholism. It came out like just in chronic low self-esteem. But in your case, what would you say would be the worst long-term effect that it had on you?
Yeah, really. And thank you for sharing a little bit about your story as well. But the long-term really effect that stayed with me for so long was just feeling like I was not worthy of having the life of my dreams. And it showed up in every area of my life. I at that point, like I was carrying my abuse on my shoulders. Like every job interview I went into, I was like, just please hire me, like never felt my worth in that room. In relationships, I never felt that I was worthy. I was like, I settled a lot. I would have multiple friendships and romantic relationships because I was like, I never wanted to get close to anybody. So I think the one thing that really lasted for so long, and honestly, it's still something that I'm like, hey, Alisha, you are absolutely worth going for even bigger dreams, because I played so small before. And so that's really something that I work through every single day. And it's something that I get to work through. Like it's amazing because it's been teaching me a lot now too. When I changed my mindset around and realized that going through abuse has made me stronger, it's actually made me be able to enjoy the journey.
Do you think that your story of child sexual abuse, all your experiences with that, do you think it affected the decisions and choices you made along the way as you're growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like it altered, do you think that had that not happened to you, you might have made different choices in life and, maybe gone down a different path or something like that?
Yeah, I do think I would have definitely probably gone down a different path. I mean, like I said, like I put a mask on that I was okay, and I partied and drank and did stuff with guys and all these things because I was like, well, this has already been taken. Might as well just keep going. And so I had that attitude. But in that was still my choice, and choosing to not show up for myself, choosing to allow myself to continue to hurt myself. And so, yeah, like I definitely would have gone down a different path. But to be honest, like, and this took me years to realize, like, but it's actually made me the powerful, strong leader I am today. And so, of course, like, I don't wish that upon anybody, but I also, like, I wouldn't take back anything that I've gone through, because now I have this opportunity to support other women who have gone through this in a way that I can understand them and be sympathetic to what they've been through. So we all have that choice to allow that to continue to ruin the rest of our lives or empower us to show up differently. So.
Oh, I agree 100%. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It took me 40 years, so kudos to you that it took you a lot less.
Yeah, and we all have our own journeys in that. And 40, and I've heard someone share their story with me for the first time when I posted mine online 3-4 years ago, that was 65, and she had never told anybody about her childhood abuse. So we all have like our own time to share and to come out, but like we're never going to feel ready, right? We're never going to feel ready to address our painful past experiences, or feel ready to dive deep into it, because a lot of times, and I'm sure maybe you guys have noticed this too, like you just kept busy. You just kept extremely busy so that you didn't actually have to check in on yourself. Can you guys relate at all? That you're like, no,
I was a nurse for 13 years and I worked double time. I was working shift, I was working 2 jobs.
Oh my goodness.
So I could take care of everybody else and not worry about me, right?
Oh yes. See, yep. Wow. Similar. Like 3 jobs in college and yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It just at that point, like that's what seemed easier was just to avoid it. But you know what, you resist,
Oh,
persist. And so it comes up, it keeps coming up until we're willing to take a look at it.
Yeah, it's like you're working yourself into a frenzy so you can escape yourself, but you can't escape yourself.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
even tried, and I know a lot of people have done this too, geographical changes, right? You think if you move
Yeah.
somewhere else, things will be different.
Hmm.
That, oh, I can start all over in a brand new place where nobody knows me and it's going to be just fine.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. You're like, I'll never have to share my story. I can be whoever I want to be. But the truth is, like, we have that choice anywhere at any time. And so it's like we don't have to move, we don't have to run away. Like we get to stay right where we're at. And just like, yeah, I think, it's in that we don't want to share who we are or what we've gone through. But for one, we don't have to share with people we don't feel comfortable with. And like it's not something to be embarrassed about, because I don't know about you, but like I felt really embarrassed and really dirty and broken from
Yeah.
going through abuse, and I allowed that to be the case of, yeah, allowed that to be how people treated me for years afterwards.
Well, that was the message you got from your mother, which is
Yeah,
very
Oh
contempt.
yeah,
my.
How did
yeah,
you work through the
exactly.
anger? Did you have anger with your mom?
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Yeah. So for years afterwards, obviously, like, we had a really hard relationship, and I was really, yeah, really angry with her until about a few years ago when I realized I was going to share my story. Actually, I knew that I got to go back and talk with my family about what was going on, and yeah, address the elephant in the room, because what happened, and I know this happens with a lot of families, is that something happens like that in your family, you maybe address it, maybe you don't, maybe you get help, counseling for a little bit, maybe you don't, but then you go on with life like nothing's happened. And that's exactly what happened to my family. So it was actually a really amazing moment when I got to go back and tell my parents that I was going to start sharing my story. And I even went to my abuser, and because he was still on and off in my life, and so I got to have that conversation with him. But for my mom, it wasn't until really recently I went through a leadership program, and I had gone through some forgiveness activities with my mom, and on and off, and we like, even to this day, like we're still getting to know each other, because what I realized with my mom is that she reacted the way that she was taught to react. She actually had gone through some similar things as a child, not for as long, but she kind of just had it, taken care of once and then moved on. And so that's unfortunately, like, how she reacted with me. And so I have had complete forgiveness with her, in the sense that I'm able to see her perspective of things. Like, it's not that it was okay, and she has apologized, and those kind of things like do get to still happen. But yeah, we've just realized, like, I don't even know. I felt like I didn't even know her at all after that, because I had
Oh,
spent so many years being so angry that now we're relearning who we are. So
that's amazing that you can do that, because I think a lot of
yeah,
people would not be able to, because that's just a
yeah,
terrible thing to do to a child. Oh my goodness. I mean,
yeah,
that's abandonment in the worst
yeah.
possible form.
Yes. Yeah, and exactly, and it absolutely wasn't okay, and I don't always like encourage people to do this, but forgiveness is for you. It's
Mhm.
for you, and that's sometimes like what we get held up on, because like even a lot of my clients are like, well, I don't want to forgive him because like it wasn't okay what he did. I'm like, yeah, it wasn't okay what he did. And like, hear how you're talking about it. Hear the anger behind that. Like, you are worth having that freedom and letting go of the anger, and in that form is really an amazing way to do that, is forgiveness. And there's just different ways to do it, but I encourage, like, everyone listening, like, it gets to happen. It's just simple as that. Like, we don't get to carry this on for so long.
I know, like, in my own personal journey, everybody's different where they're at. And like I said earlier, it took me 40 years to even start talking about it. And in my case, I ended up having to go to a program for women just because where you actually lived there for a year. It was a faith-based program. And that's where I
Yeah.
learned about anger management. And they said, Kathy, I said, I'm not angry. And the lady said, Kathy, just because you said that, you're going into class, right? Because I didn't realize that because, I'm too nice, I'm kind, I'm gentle. I'm not angry, but anger comes out in different ways. And I didn't know that. So I had to deal with that. I said, I'm not angry at my mom. I'm not angry at those who, who hurt me. But I also had to learn about boundaries and learn how to say no and what the heck is codependency. I didn't know what that was because it's all part of the child sexual abuse and low self-esteem and dealing with the sexual abuse in itself. Now I had to have, my therapy was 5 days a week in different classes, and I saw a personal therapist once a week. I know for you it's different. So when you sought out help for the first time, what did that look like for you, and how did that help you?
Yeah. Way to take yourself on and go into through that year program, by the way. And yeah, everyone's healing journey looks a little bit different, but it's good to be able to hear other people's to get some ideas for yourself and see what, and see, like, try it on, like, see what works for you, because what works for me might not always work for you. But here's what I do know is that we get to take ourselves on right in that. And so looking for different things for me, what worked for me was I had gone through childhood counseling for a little bit. Like, it was probably like 6 months. And she supported me in realizing it wasn't my fault because I was saying some things that I was like, and she was like, this wasn't your fault, right? So that was supportive to hear that. Mm-hmm. But it didn't really hit me and land with me until really years later when I let go of the guilt and the shame and the hating on myself. And how I did that, I didn't actually end up going to counseling. I actually ended up getting a coach. So I got a personal development coach. And for me, like, that's what supported me in realizing that, that I do get to stand up for myself and just really figuring out who I was again. Because like I said, I just really realized, like, I was like, man, who is Alisha G anyways? And so it was just this process of having a coach, having a mentor, like really figuring out who I was, what I love to do again, talking through these things. And then also I use fitness. I think fitness is the best way to fight for yourself after abuse because it teaches your mind that you're worth showing up. You're physically strong and mentally strong. So that was one of the huge takeaways that I, really started to like use the gym, like for me, not, I always played sports. I always did it for other people, looks, whatever it was. But the gym started to be something where I'm like, I get to build my strength back up. And so that was supportive. I had a really amazing community around me. I, really got rid of a lot of my friends from college that I used to party and drink with. And I replaced those with women who I went to events with. I would show up at self-development events by myself. Like, I would just Google events, I live in Arizona. So I was like, events in Arizona for women. And I would just show up to these fitness events, these self-development events by myself. And I just met all these powerful women and surrounded myself with women who are willing to show up for themselves. I think it's just so important because our environment really does matter. It's not that we always have to just like move to different cities like we were talking about earlier, but it's also like looking up around you and seeing who you can start surrounding yourself with, who are not just going to sit in the victim mentality. And really that was my really big shift in my life, was not living in the victim mentality.
That's remarkable. That's absolutely awesome. Like, oh my God, it's funny that you say that because I've been saying for the longest time that, people, they'll say, well, you got to hang out with like-minded people and, you got to be, but I said, no, you got to hang out with people who are going to push you, people who are going to challenge you, people who are going to make you question yourself and what your goals and dreams, not because if you hang out with people who have the same, sure, you like to say go mountain hiking or biking or doing whatever. It's all, they're not pushing you. You're just staying status quo pro, right?
Yes. Sure. So, I love that so much. Yes.
Yeah. Find the people that are going to really lift you up and get you to move to a whole new level in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People who absolutely believe in you and that aren't jealous. Because I think that a lot of maybe people who have jealousy, they actually have their own hangups and they really don't want anybody else succeeding because then they have to work at something,
Yeah, exactly. And especially, like as women, like a lot of women are just taught to be in competition with each other and to be judgmental or compare ourselves to one another. But in that, it's like there's room for all of us to be successful. There's room for all of us to be where we want to be. And so that was like, yeah, that I love what you guys said, because it's like, it's actually people who are willing to push each other and not be jealous of each other. It's like, I want everyone around me to succeed. I'm like, how can I support you guys in showing up? Because when you win, like, we all win.
That's right.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
What was the moment that made you realize, I got to change? How did that occur?
Yeah. It was really like the start of it. I just remember the start of it was from my fiance, when he just shared, you don't get to continue helping these girls until you help yourself.
Okay.
Because it was like, I was acting like I was okay, but no one who is happy and go lucky girl, like, drinks until the point that they're drunk every night, has like 4 jobs, like, is just continuously busy. Right. And so that was like the moment that I just really stepped back. I stopped working with those girls. I took like a year to really figure out who I was again. But yeah, that moment was just really like, it just came down to just knowing in my heart that I no longer get to allow my past to determine my future. Because even at that point, I had friends in my life, like, love them to death, but they were just like, they're too kind with me. They were just like, well, you drink a lot. Yeah, you do stuff with other guys a lot, but it's because you've gone through childhood abuse. But in that, they were allowing me to also use that as an excuse. And so I had to really, really realize that, like, that was a choice that I was making. And exactly like when I hired that first coach as well, like, she absolutely did not allow me to sit in my excuses and my stories too. So it's like finding that person who's not going to just be like, because some people we're like, oh no, my friend and my family, or even sometimes, like, I love it that you have the support, but like your pastor, your mentor, they're like, like, they're supporting me. But it's different when you have a coach who's really invested in your transformation, and they don't really know, they don't know you in the sense that they're not just going to let you just slide back into your old ways. Like, they just support you in continuing to move forward.
That's so important. And I think it's so very frustrating that victims are blamed.
Yeah. Yes. It's 64% of victims are usually not believed or blamed for, what they were wearing, how much they were drinking.
Oh yeah. You got to love that question. What were you wearing?
Yeah. Oh yes. What were you wearing? How much did you drink? All of those are just like, and we take that on as victims. We just, we take that on, and I don't know why I said victims. I don't even like calling it that, because it's not that we're victims. It's like that experience was not okay. But when we hear those things, we're just like, oh yeah, see, I shouldn't have said anything. And the silence is the worst part. Like, it's the abuse that happens, but it's the years after that you blame yourself, you beat up on yourself, and that you feel like you're so alone. Because I'm sure you guys have had those experiences where you're like, I'm just alone. Like, no one understands me, or no one understands this experience.
Yeah. I find that when I really notice that when I talk to schools and when I talk to the young girls, and you can see it in their eyes, which ones, right? And then to have them come up to me afterwards and say something, or then furthermore decide to press charges, to me, that's the most uplifting, gratifying experience, is because that's what it's all about. Having that voice, say something, don't wait till you're 40 and then say it. Right? Yeah.
It's so important. So you go into high schools, middle schools to speak about it?
Oh, I do. Absolutely. I go to women's shelters. I mean, I endured years of domestic violence just because of that. I'm carrying around that low self-esteem, and that it's all my fault. I'm not good enough. And all that worship
Yeah.
that you were talking about. It affected me. It affects so many people. And it
Yeah.
literally
Really
took
does.
me till I was 42 to recognize that, wait a minute, I've had this
Yeah.
backwards my entire life. What?
Exactly. And like you just said, like you went into another abusive relationship, and that's what often happens. And then you get in that cycle of like, okay, well, maybe I just deserve this. Like that it's happening to me
Yeah.
again. But it's like, it's really like acknowledging it, that it happened, saying it out loud, and breaking the chains of abuse. Because I really believe like it's a generational thing that gets passed on when you don't talk about it, when you don't stand up for yourself. Because even in my family, it happened to my mom. And I realized like some of the anger that I had towards her was because she didn't break the chains of abuse in her life, didn't speak up about it with me. And again, like I've had a lot of forgiveness for that, but like for me, like that like lights fire underneath me, because I'm like, my kids do not get to not know how to say no and how to prepare themselves for this. And exactly, like I would love to start speaking in middle schools and high schools, because I didn't know what the word sexual abuse meant when I was going through it. And sure, now I think people are talking about it a little bit more in schools, but not enough. It's not enough. And we get to still empower people to speak up.
Boundaries is a big thing too.
Mm-hmm.
Learning
Yeah.
to say no and not feel guilty because you said no.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And realizing like, yeah, your time is really valuable. Like, we're always canceling on ourselves. Like it's like, no, okay, this is my time to, take a bath. This is my time to do the laundry, whatever it is. But then someone calls, needs something. You're like, okay, sure. And so we're always just like giving up our personal space. We're giving up our time for everybody else around us. And that's exhausting. It's
And
just
that's
really
also a side
exhausting.
effect of child sexual abuse is
Mhm.
being a people pleaser, searching out that
Yes.
love and affection from anybody and anywhere,
Yeah.
in any way. I know I was a chameleon for years. Like whatever you want
Yeah.
to be, I would be, and it
Yeah.
did, like yourself, I had to learn to figure out who Kathy really was. And it doesn't happen overnight. And for anybody out there that is struggling with that, you got to give yourself time, right? You got to be
Yeah.
kind to your mind and just,
Yeah.
nurture yourself back to where you need to be.
Yeah, it's so true. Because in that process of healing, and when people come to me, they're like, okay, like, so, because I have a year-long program. So they're like, okay, in a year from now, I'm going to be great. I'm going to be perfect. Like I'm going to be completely healed. I'm like,
No.
yeah, we're gonna continue to go there, and we're gonna continue to have some transformation. But I'm like, there's no way I'm guaranteed that, for one. And also, like, that's okay that we're not going to be like completely healed in a year or whatever it is that it takes, because like it's a healing journey, not a sprint. Like you get to continue to learn these things. And like, even with like triggers, for instance, like, when we have triggers, obviously like they're sometimes painful to go through and to work through, and definitely don't try to work through them on your own sometimes. But even in that now, like when I do have triggers come up, which I haven't had in a while, I am like, okay, interesting. Why is that still coming up? What have I not worked through? What have I not talked about? And just notice these things about yourself. Like, don't be curious why that's coming up, instead of being like, oh, trigger came up, push it back down. Because like we said this earlier too, is like what you resist persists, and it's going to continue showing up until you address those things.
With the people you work with, do some of them express fear of getting to know themselves because they really don't know who they are?
Yeah, exactly. It's more of just like they feel lost. It's just more of just like, we're like, hey, what do we do next? Because oftentimes like we can want to do these things, but when we're doing them on our own, oftentimes like we're our own worst enemy. So on the day that it does get hard, the day that you do want to revert to some of your old habits, or your old like limiting beliefs about yourself, then you negotiate with yourself out of showing up powerfully for yourself every time almost. But when you have somebody like a coach or support in that, then they can kind of notice that, they can see that, and they can talk through that and work through it with you. Because I think, the biggest thing is like, okay, what's next? And how do I continue showing up for myself? Because it's one thing to go to an event. It's one thing to go to, and that's why I have a year-long program. Because I think sometimes we're like, oh, 6 weeks, awesome. 6 weeks, I'm in 6-week challenge, 6-week, whatever. It's like, we get in our minds, we just want it to happen quickly. And the truth is like, yeah, we got to take our time with it.
Well, it takes a while to break an old habit.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes. And it's also just like getting clear on what isn't working for you. Cause it's like these old habits and like limiting beliefs. I like to call them my nerds. Like they're my nerds that show up. And so every time I notice them, like my perfectionism nerd for one, I'm like, I laugh every time I say nerd. Cause I'm like, okay, yep, it's here again. Me showing up, trying to be perfect. I don't get to be perfect. I don't need to be perfect. And just talking through that. And then like, I always say like feeding it a banana, like feed it a banana, acknowledge that you're there, perfectionism nerd, and you don't get to show up in my life, and getting to choose out of that. Cause it's not an overnight thing where you're like, oh, I don't want to keep on having to people please. And tomorrow it's just gone. Right. It's like, okay, how can I work through that? How can I work on not being a people pleaser?
Tell us a little bit about that program you're talking about that's a year long. I know it's called Release, Reclaim, and Rise, but what does that include?
Yeah, so that Release, Reclaim, and Rise is actually one of my other programs that I do on a short-term level. Okay. And then that kind of gets you prepared to do the stand up and stand out program. But this is a year-long program with it's either individual or you get a group program with it, because I really think it's powerful to rise up with a community of women, like I said before, like who are on your same journey, who kind of understand where you've been coming from. And so it's just a year-long, like figuring out, like, first of all, is vision. Yeah. What's not working for you? Like figuring that out. Cause sometimes we don't even notice, like exactly like you just said, we've gone through it for so long that we don't even notice that we're still doing these things. So figuring out what's not working, then it's breaking through those limiting beliefs, breaking through some of the things that's not working. And then it's just showing up powerfully and actually creating the life of your dreams. So like whether that's, a lot of my clients sometimes want to be coaches, they want to be speakers, or they want a new job. And so we like in that last portion of the program, we really actually like implement the things we're learning, and we just get really uncomfortable during the program. Like one of the things I'm like, yeah, you're going to love and hate me in this program. And it's okay because we get to get uncomfortable. And I think so often, like we just stay in our like bubbles. We stay in our friendship bubbles. We stay in our comfortability bubble. And in that, we don't really grow as much as we could be. So it's really short. That's basically what the program is all about.
So you're teaching people to overcome fear too, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. Fear, really figuring out, what is still coming up? Is it fear? Is it the self-hate? Is it, the forgiveness? And working through that. And it's really individual. Like all my coaching is just really individual because we all have different things that work for us, and we got to figure out what that is.
Do you find there's a lot of women that struggle to even name what their emotions are feeling? I had a hard time describing when I was feeling angry, because I didn't really know. To me, anger came out in violence, right? Because that's all I know.
Yeah.
So to figure out when I was actually angry took me a while to figure that out, or like to actually name a specific emotion. Do you find other women have that same thing, or?
Yeah,
like
absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yes. No, you're not the only one. And I know, and that is always feels like you're lonely, right? Because it's like, I don't know why. And then again, we ask ourselves, why am I not feeling emotions? Why am I not, and beat up on ourselves even more. But exactly, a lot of women and men as well who've gone through something painful, put up that guard, that mask. And in that, they also like shut off all emotions, good emotions, bad emotions. And so like I always tell people, like it's actually really important to feel it all. And so we just like walk through just different things of like, different experiences and different things that come up. And even sharing it out loud and starting to realize like it's actually safe to feel happy. It's safe to feel like it's even safe to feel sad sometimes, because we can't have one or the other. Like we get to feel all of the emotions and be able to work through them. But it's like you said, it's also acknowledging that like that's something that you are noticing. You're noticing that you don't feel any emotions. You're noticing that you're not happy or sad. It's like the weirdest feeling, right? You're just like, I don't feel sad, but I also don't feel happy. And it's like, and then you hear all these other people like feeling happy or sad. And it's like, what's wrong with me? But there's nothing wrong. It's just like allowing yourself to know that you're safe to feel those.
Yeah, and being numb for so long,
Yeah,
or numbing whatever emotion that you're feeling. When you stop doing that, it's very difficult to put a finger on it. Do you have any men
exactly.
at all that are interested in your program, or is it mostly women?
Yeah. So right now I just work with women. I work with like powerful women leaders who are showing up for everybody else. But I am open to looking at working with men. The reason in the past I haven't worked with men is because I've done mostly group programs, and in that, a lot of the women didn't feel safe working with men.
Yeah.
So I do have other coaches that I know that are really powerful working with men, and so I always make sure that I have like a support system of the referrals to give to people. And even like on that note too, it's like when I get on a call with people, like I really talk through like, hey, is this the right program for you? Or maybe would counseling be better, or would something else be better? So we talk through all those things, but men, it happens just as much with men as well. And it's like, I make sure that like when I talk about it, I do address like these things are going to support men as well. And figuring out how we can do a better job of allowing men to be vulnerable and share what's going on in their lives.
Yeah. Sometimes they get forgotten when it comes to
Yeah.
sexual abuse. People think it's mostly women, but no, there's a large amount of men that
Yeah.
that have gone through similar things, but most of them don't share it.
They're rather reluctant, aren't they, to come forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Because like our society has just done a bad job of just letting them know that it's safe for them to come forward.
Mm-hmm.
And when it happens with men, sometimes they get embarrassed because it questions like their sexuality or whatever else it is, and so they get really embarrassed in that. But it's really important for men to know, and if men are listening to this, like you're absolutely safe to share with somebody. And I would also tell this to somebody who hasn't shared their story yet. Find somebody who's actually going to listen, and keep going until someone actually shows up and supports you. Because I know sometimes like we tell one person and their reaction maybe was like my mom's, and they don't really understand us, hear us, and say the things that we need to have happen, or get us support. And we stop there. We're like, Kate, told one person, didn't work out. Keep going, keep sharing until someone's willing to show up for you.
I think quite often too, when a child's going through an abusive situation, parents and various other people in their lives, they're good at doing gaslighting, which makes
Yeah.
the child not believe what they've experienced or what they've seen. They'll be told, that's something you thought you heard, or thought you saw, or thought you experienced. It wasn't real, when in fact it was. So, I mean, that's something that you incorporate, and then you never really trust. Well, maybe that really didn't happen. It's got to be me. That's part of the self-blame game.
Yeah. Yeah. There's the threats, there's the gaslighting. Like, so oftentimes when people hear about kids getting abused or people being through abusive situations, are like, well, why didn't you tell somebody? And until you actually have gone through it, until you realize like that, yeah, there's so many situations where they like say, no, like you like this. And then you're like, did I? Like, and you even like start questioning, even like to the point of like, you feel sick when it happens, but then they manipulate your mind. And at such a young age, at such pivotal ages as children, like you don't even know where your sexuality is. You don't know what feels good, what doesn't.
Sure.
And so like sometimes like that's a really hard topic too, because I've talked to women who they're like, I think I enjoyed it. And it's like they feel so bad about that. But I'm like, it wasn't your fault that was the case. Like that was just your body, like not knowing how to react to right touch and not okay touch, and just being able to share that. And so like I make sure to mention that stuff too, because it's in that it's like, okay, well, it was my fault, right? Like, but in that case, still, it's like you were a child, you didn't know what was going on, and your body didn't know how to react to that.
Sure. Yeah. But all of those things are carried with us forward, like a bad set of luggage that you're dragging around.
Yeah.
And then you're packing a guilt trip.
Absolutely. Until you realize like that it has made you stronger. Like, and I know that's crazy to hear, because most people are most, I don't know, most TV shows like show these like broken women who've gone through abuse. And don't get me wrong, like it is painful, and it can be challenging going through the healing journey. but we're actually so much stronger than we realize. And we're so capable of working through it and showing up. And I truly believe like our most painful past experiences actually make us like the best leaders when we're able to turn them around, the best, like powerful, like sympathetic leaders, because we have felt that, we know how that feels, and we can share how we're showing up powerfully in this world and be an example to others.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
The problem is getting people to recognize that, because they're so focused on the brokenness that they forget to look up and try and see past that veil, that illusion that things can get better, that things that the miracles are right on the other side of that curtain. If you just go through that curtain, pull it aside, rip it down, do something, but move.
Yeah,
you know,
100%. And that comes like also because like we just get stubborn sometimes, and we try to do life on our own, but we're not meant to do life on our own. We're meant to have community. We're meant to have support, because when we're like too scared to go to the next level, or it's oftentimes because it's like we're just on our own. And I can relate to that. Like I had lots of friend groups, I had lots of people, but I didn't actually want to get close to anybody because I didn't actually want them to know who, at that point, who the real Alisha G, like quote unquote broken Alisha G was. And so it's really like allowing yourself to be a part of community, reach out for support, because that's the most powerful thing you can do, is actually say, hey, I'm not okay, and getting support.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Did you know that 80% of America's communities rely on trucking alone to deliver their goods? The trucking industry keeps America running thanks to the 3.6 million professional truck drivers traveling over 300 billion miles a year. Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward, or TMAF, tells the story of trucking and its positive impact on our economy, communities, and lives. Learn how you can be part of the industry movement working to build a strong image of trucking by visiting truckingmovesamerica.com.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
The hardest part in sharing my story when I first started, when I wrote my book, was letting people I work with know, because everybody just saw Kathy as happy and, bubbly and, always good to be around. They had no idea of anything that went on. So what I did is that, when I'm going to do this, I went in front of my crew at work and I put my book on the screen. I said, you see that book, the cover? It's not about mining. The book has nothing to do about mining. And this is what it's about. Yeah. This is what I've experienced. And I'm not asking you to buy the book. I'm not asking you to read the book. But if you know someone that has experienced, any type of sexual abuse, any type of depression, any type of suicidal tendencies, any type of self-harm, maybe pass them the book, because maybe one sentence in there is all they need to read to get the help that they need. Well, by my doing that, it opened up doors to, it's like people from all different departments all over the company were coming to me on the side and kind of sharing me a little bit about their stories. So instead of talking about, hey, what'd you do on days off, or hey, how's the weather? It actually opened up conversations, real conversations. And so do you find that when you started talking about it, that it kind of opened up similar ways, like people are actually wanting to share a little bit because you shared, because you found the courage to say that?
Yeah. For one, like, oh my goodness, you are so bold. And that is so powerful to hear, because yes, like we get to start with those around us too. Because so often, exactly, those are the ones that we get in our head that's embarrassing, or, like they don't need to know that. Or, for me, when I first shared my story for the first time publicly, I shared on Instagram and Facebook. And I just remember being like, well, I don't want to be known as a girl who's gone through abuse. But I kept on having people, even before that, like on the side, I would share my story and I would have people share that they had experienced the same thing. And I was like, you know what, if I post this, and I asked myself, I was like, if I could support one person, like you just said, if it was one person that saw this and was supported by this, would I do it? And the answer was yes. And every single time I step on a stage when I get nervous, every single time I do interviews and I get nervous, like, cause that sometimes that still happens. Like sometimes we put people on pedestals and we're like, well, she can do it. Alisha can do it. Kathy can do it. Shelly can do it. It's like, no, we still maybe feel that nervousness. And I always say it's like nerve sided. It's like you're nervous and you're excited, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel that. And do it anyways, because we're never going to feel ready to share our stories. We're never going to feel ready to write a book. We're never going to feel ready, but it's in those moments when you're like, hey, it's not just about me. How can I support other people? Like you just said, like you went in front of your whole office and shared that and had so many open stories. And from that, I've had women like from all across the board, like I just shared that woman who she was 65 years old and she shared her story with me. And I was like, thank you so much for sharing. Who else have you shared with? She was like, no, Alisha, you don't understand. You're the first person I've ever shared with.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. And so,
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's like really what progressed, like having those people come to me and share their stories. And then I was like, bye. But I was like, I want to do more for these women. I want to teach them some things that have supported me, like things that people have taught me, ways I've been able to show up. And so that's like really naturally how coaching started, was just being willing to say yes, get uncomfortable and do it anyways.
I like your phrase, show up for yourself.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. We really, really get to start with ourselves first. Yeah.
What brings you the most joy in all that you do? Like, what is the most gratifying thing that, makes you get up in the morning to continue tackling your day?
Oh yeah. I'm so grateful for my life. Like, I'm just so grateful that I can't believe like I get to just share this experience, like speak on these interviews, do these things that I get to do, because every time I hear somebody's story and every time I get to impact somebody, like I know it's not just about me. Like I know that it's about the generations, like passing that down, and who do they get to impact? And so it's like, it's really seeing like these women that I've been coaching become coaches, become speakers, sharing their stories and the ripple effect that it has. And so like the biggest joy really would be just that, like seeing these women show up so powerfully, and a lot of these business women who already are impacting so many people, allowing them to like transform their businesses into also an open space, like you just said, an open space to talk about the things that aren't working, the painful past experiences, and really just, the ripple effect.
Nice.
That is so awesome. And I think it's wonderful because you're actually creating a network. Over time, people form bonds, and they have a network of people who are like-minded. They know that they can share with them, because I'm sure they get a fair amount of pushback, perhaps with their families and various other things when they're trying to make this change too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because some people, liked you for who you used to be, for the person that maybe like that you knew inside you weren't. Like I was the party starter. I always knew what party was. And people liked me for that, right? People counted on me for that. But when I realized like that wasn't who I was, like I did get to find new friends and find people that were willing to grow with me. And that's okay. Like, we all have like a space for people. Like we have a space for people, and we get to choose like who we allow into that space. And that goes back to those boundaries. Again, it's like, hey, okay, this friendship's not working. And maybe, that's friend, like it's actually rude to keep friends on, keep romantic relationships on when it's not working, because they might have other people that actually do want to spend more time with them, that actually do like their company.
Well, I think it's awesome what you're doing. Oh my gosh, you're helping so many people.
Thank you.
You're transforming lives, which is so very important. So what's next for you? What's next on your docket, Alisha?
Yeah, what's next? Oh my goodness. Yes, so much. I honestly, like, I get to speak more. I get to go out and obviously in-person events are starting to open up again. So I've been doing a lot more in-person in events, because I really believe in like the power of just like, I love hugs. Never used to be a hugger, never used to, allow those like emotions or like that come out. But I really love doing that. And again, I'm going to start doing like retreats again and opening up that atmosphere as well, just in-person connection. And I actually just bought a horse.
Nice.
Yeah. And so I want to start using that in my programs as well, to support women to have that connection. Because when I was going through abuse, my neighbors had horses, and that was like my time to get away. And there are these really rambunctious Arabian horses But he was like, I don't know what it is, but whenever you come over, they're so calm and da da da. It's like they knew what I needed. And horses are
That's neat.
just so powerful and having that connection. So that's probably what I'm most excited about next is adding that into my programs and
There you go.
spending more time with him too.
That's so awesome. Where can people find out more information about your program?
Yeah. So I love just connecting personally. Like if this is something that's speaking to you and if you want this kind of support in your life, then I would just reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram, Alisha, Alisha, and then Gee, Alisha on Facebook. And then Instagram is just Alisha_ we lift to rise. And yeah, just reach out, message me, and we'll set up a phone call and go from there.
So just to repeat that, people can find you on Facebook at Alisha G, spelled ALISHAGEE. And then on Instagram, listeners can reach out to you at Alisha_you lift to rise. Again, Alisha_you lift to rise on Instagram. We're so happy you've been on the show here. And I think what you're doing is so very necessary. You're empowering so many women. It's about time, right?
You've been an absolute wonderful guest. My gosh, it's been so nice talking with you.
Yeah.
You have that energy. You could feel it.
Yep.
Yes, I know. I feel like we could talk all day. Like, thank you for having me because you guys have been amazing too.
You've been listening to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. If you want to be a guest on the show or have a topic or feedback, email us at info@tncradio.live.
Thank you for listening to another great interview on tncradio.live and the Truckers Network radio show. All of the material you hear on tncradio.live on our website, our broadcasts, or our podcasts are copyrighted. There can be no distribution without the express consent of tncradio.live and its partners. For inquiries, write us at info@tncradio.live.